Hey guys, if this is your first time to my channel, hello and welcome. My name is Emily and today I have another spooky Saturday for you. Today's spooky Saturday is all about the lead mask case. I don't know if you guys have heard of this before, but I heard about it about a year ago and it's intrigued me ever since. This case has a little bit of UFOs, has a little bit of true crime, so we get the best of both worlds here. This case does take place in Brazil, so I'm going to do my absolute best to pronounce everything as respectfully and the best that I can. And if for any reason I mispronounce it, I apologize in advance. I have looked up on Google Translate as well as on YouTube how to pronounce some of these things. I don't have the tongue roll like the Portuguese do. It's not going to sound exact, but I'm going to do my absolute best. Nonetheless, let's get into the case. This case takes place on August 20th of 1966, so quite a while ago. This case takes place on Vintém Hill, which is in Niterói, Brazil, which is kind of near Rio de Janeiro. A boy flying a kite was on Vintém Hill, just having a good time flying his kite, walking around the park and whatnot. And he witnessed two bodies laying in this brush, kind of bushy area. Upon walking up to the bodies, he noticed that they were not people sleeping, they were actual dead bodies and had an odor and whatnot, so he called in the authorities. Because there was a large amount of bushes and terrain, the police and the firemen and the officials were not able to get to the bodies until the next day. And what they found was pretty suspicious. They came across the two dead bodies. Upon discovering the bodies, the police and the firemen discovered that the bodies were both laying on their backs, facing forward. They were both in suits. They both had waterproof coats, and they both had these lead eye masks that were either next to them or were wearing them. I've seen accounts of both on the internet, so I'm just going to say that they were next to them because I've seen that more. Now, what is strange about the lead eye masks is that they looked homemade. They did not look like they went out and bought these lead eye masks, and to be honest, I don't even know if anywhere sells lead eye masks because typically when you are using a mask of some sort that is made of some kind of heavy material to protect your face, you still want to be able to see through it, and you could not see at all through these lead eye masks. It completely blinded you. So these were definitely homemade. Next to the bodies, the police found 2 packets of moist towels, and they also found a water bottle that had been drunk. There was also a small notebook left next to the bodies that had cryptic instructions on them. The instructions were handwritten and read at 16:30, be at the location. At 18:30, ingest capsules, and it had a very chilling and eerie ending to the note. It read, "After effect, protect metals and await signal mask." And that has of course been translated into English, so it might be just a little bit off from the original message which was written in Portuguese, but I think the general consensus of the note has been determined. So after taking the bodies away and taking them to a morgue of some sorts, I guess the coroner who was supposed to do the autopsy didn't end up doing a toxicology examination on them to see what the heck they had taken, what substance it was that they had ingested, but the reason for their deaths was chalked up to heart failure. So for me, that's a little bit sus because for me, that's not a complete autopsy. You definitely want to do a toxicology report, especially if the person that you are examining has written out in instructions to take a certain type of pill that might be a psychedelic, might be a poison. We don't know what that was, and are we ever really gonna know what the heck they ingested? Probably not. But there is speculation on what they took, and we will get into that in just a little bit. So let's get into the background of both of these men. They were both electricians, and apparently they were friends and hung out quite often. They both had families of their own, and apparently after the police searched their house, they found that both of the men had spiritual books, books on the occult. One of the men also had the mask making equipment in the house, meaning that my theory from earlier was true, that they were handmade masks. Upon doing research into this video, I guessed that a couple years before this situation happened, there was another man in the same area on top of the same hill that was also an electrician who died under the same similar circumstances. He had ingested something and had also had a lead mask with him. And the details around that specific case are very fuzzy. But there was an old newspaper that was written and printed around the time that this happened, stated that these deaths that have recently happened were very similar to a man's case that happened a couple of years back that also involved the lead mask in the same general area. There was also a lot of talk about electricians in that specific area of Brazil actually being in a spiritual scientific group. To me, it connects the two different cases of bodies being found atop the hill with the lead masks. To me, that definitely forms a connection between the two different cases. There is also multiple accounts of Miguel and Manuel actually having some of their friends over and trying to create a device out of specific metals that were in their house to contact spirits with or UFOs with. According to these accounts, the men were actually successful in making something to try to contact spirits or UFOs with, but it blew up upon impact. It blew up immediately as soon as they turned it on. And apparently a bunch of neighbors and surrounding people that were walking by and bystanders actually saw and heard this happen. This incident allegedly happened just a few months before they were found upon the hill dead. So the police actually have a narrative that they wrote out of a timeline of what they think that the men were doing and how they got to the hill and the steps that they took to get to the hill on the day that they actually died, which would have been 3 days before they were found, which would have been August 17th of 1966. The police believe that the men both left work early together that day and boarded a bus to Niterói, Brazil, which ended up being where they were found, and they arrived at 2:30 p.m. Due to examining the waterproof jackets that they had with them, they were able to determine that the waterproof jackets were bought from a store in Niterói. Upon questioning the business owners and some of the civilians, they found out that the men actually bought the water bottle from a local bar to the area, and the waitress that worked at the bar stated that the men kept checking their watches and that one of them seemed extremely nervous. So it seemed like they were in a time crunch and that they were really nervous about what was going on. And this is their last known report of them being seen alive. The police assumed that from here, they went over to the location, ingested the pills, followed the instructions, and that is when they died. So the police assume that this was their last stop before, unfortunately, their untimely death. So that is basically all the information that I have found on this specific case. There isn't a whole lot of information into it, and I don't really feel like there was a giant investigation into what happened, but since the internet gets everyone's idea juices going, there is a lot of theories that have been floating around. The first and most widely known theory that most people have for this case is that they were actually able to contact either spirits or UFOs. I do believe that UFOs is more believed than spirits, but there was actual evidence of them trying to get in contact with spirits or ghosts, if you will. But most people believe that the men were actually successful in contacting these paranormal beings, and that possibly they came down and either killed them, maybe took their spirits, maybe they were a sacrifice to the paranormal beings. That is the most believed theory, and it's kind of the most outlandish, to be honest, but I don't know, people really think that the UFO thing is very plausible. And I guess that around that time period, a bunch of people in the area said that there was UFOs all over. People were reporting all the time in that time frame that there was a lot of UFOs. And ironically now, this picture is of the town nowadays. And to me, that building, that is kind of the monumental building for the town, looks a lot like a freaking UFO. But I know that's not anything. It's definitely a coincidence, but it's just kind of ironic that this UFO incident happened or possibly happened, and there's a building that looks just like a UFO. The next theory is, I would say, the most second believed theory in this case. A lot of people really think that this happened as well, and that is the theory that the men actually ingested psychedelics to try and have some kind of spiritual connection with the paranormal. Basically, they were taking drugs to try to contact the paranormal, and through drugs, they would be able to go into maybe a different dimension or a different plane and be able to have contact with these paranormal beings. Now, because we do not have a toxicology report and the autopsy, in my opinion, was done incorrectly and wasn't completed, we won't ever know what was in their systems, unfortunately. It could have been a psychedelic, it could have been something else. We just won't know. So this theory will never actually have the real evidence that it truly needs. The next theory is that the men were in some sort of religious cult or the scientific spiritualist group that was rumored to be going on amongst the electrician community in that area at that time period. There's some evidence towards them actually being in this scientific spiritualist group. Whether that's a cult, a religious movement, or something along the lines of that, we really don't know. It could have just been a club. The dudes could have just been into paranormal stuff. I mean, look at me. I research paranormal stuff all the time. Plenty of people do it, and maybe around that time period, if someone would have come across my things, maybe they would have thought I was in a religious cult as well. Who knows? And the very last theory that I'm going to talk about today is the theory that maybe some foul play was involved. Maybe somebody actually set this up. Maybe there was a murderer that was doing psychological things to get people to kill themselves, especially because of the supposed case that happened a couple years back where someone also died under very similar circumstances. That could possibly point to there being someone in the community, maybe even a part of the electrician community in that area, that was attempting to maybe steal something from these people or gain something from killing them. And that is a theory that has actually been brought forward by the YouTuber John Lorden. I love his YouTube channel. If you are into paranormal or true crime cases, I highly suggest checking out John Lorden. He is amazing and has a lot of true crime and a little bit of paranormal stuff sprinkled into his content here and there. I have watched his video on this case about 3 times, no exaggeration, because he just goes into so much detail with it. And he actually brought forth the idea that this could have possibly been foul play. He brings forth the idea that maybe if the police would have investigated this as not only maybe a suicide, but also a foul play case, like a possible homicide case, maybe they would have found more evidence to show what really happened to these poor men. But that is basically where the story ends there. Lots of unanswered questions and really strange circumstances. I find this case to be super interesting, and I highly doubt that we're going to get any of our questions answered anytime soon, if ever, which is very sad because these men deserve justice and they deserve to have their story told the right way and not just in pieces, because we don't know what happened to them. And if something bad really did happen to them, if this wasn't on their own accord, and if homicide or foul play was a part of this case, then they most definitely deserve some justice and the truth. But with that being said, that is going to be wrapping up this week's Spooky Saturday. And let me know in the comments, have you heard of this case before? Do you have any theories about what happened to them? I would be super intrigued to know what you guys think. I love hearing and reading about this case and watching videos about this case because it is definitely a giant mystery, and I love a good mystery. I do hope that you consider subscribing if you have not already. I am doing Spooky Saturday every single Saturday, and if you are also into makeup, I have all sorts of makeup stuff happening on this channel during the week. So if you're into the paranormal and makeup, I have a nice little mashup of both of them on this channel. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. I hope you are having an absolutely awesome day wherever you are, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Bye!